Hi, I'm Mr. Roland. You ever sit at a dinner table and realize your own blood's been planning your downfall? My son smiled across the table, took my house with a signature, then called me homeless like it was a joke. Folks clapped their glasses while my world collapsed in silence. But that night, someone else spoke up. A voice that changed everything. You'll want to hear what the waiter said. They said it was a celebration, said it was smiles too wide and voices too sweet. Gospel jazz played low in the background, that kind of soft, buttery saxophone that usually warmed my bones. Not tonight, though. I sat at the head of the table like a placeholder in my own story. Demier poured wine for Kiana before filling my glass. "You good, Pops?" he asked, flashing that polished grin. "Always, baby, always." I nodded, folding my napkin into a triangle out of habit. My late wife used to fold them like little leaves, her quiet way of blessing a meal. Funny how silence can feel louder than noise when someone's missing. Kiana laughed at something Ayla whispered. Our granddaughter, smart girl, curious eyes, tucked into her mac and cheese like the world was still right. For a moment I let myself pretend too, but then something shifted. Demir and Kiana were whispering again. Quick glances, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. A waiter hovered nearby, unsure whether to call me sir or just nod like I was another paying customer. I chuckled, polite and distant. Something in their joy felt rehearsed, I thought. Like a stage play I hadn't been given the script for. Kiana raised her glass. To new beginnings and official ownership. Everyone clapped. Everyone except me. That word, ownership, dropped heavy. Then the waiter came. Young kid, nervous hands. He placed a folder by my plate like it was dessert. "For your review, Mr. Roland," he mumbled, already backing away. I stared at it, heartbeat slow but heavy. The same kind of folder Demir brought by 2 weeks ago. The one I signed. Back then, he said it was just to help refinance the house. A simple signature. "Don't let pride build fences in your own house, Pops," he'd said. I'd nodded, thinking of all those Sundays preaching forgiveness, not suspicion. Trust was how I was raised, and sometimes it was how I was fooled. My fingers itched. The folder looked too familiar and too final. Demir stood up, chin high, voice clear like he'd practiced. "It's official, the house is now under our name. Pops, you can finally rest." Applause again. Even Ayla clapped, unaware. My fork slipped from my hand, clinked against the plate. "They took my roof and called it love," I whispered to myself. Ayla leaned toward me, eyes wide. "Grandpa, does that mean you're moving?" My chest tightened. I cleared my throat. "I suppose I am." Kiana smiled, all sugar and steel. "You've earned your peace, Pops. No more bills, no more worry." Peace. That's what they called it. But all I heard was one word, ricocheting in my skull. Homeless. I opened the folder. There it was. The deed. Signed, sealed, transferred, not refinanced, given away, by me. I pushed back my chair and stood up slow. Not angry, not yet, just numb. I made my way to the restroom, eyes on the ground, not ready to meet their gazes. The sink was cold under my palms. I leaned in, breathing through my nose, trying not to shake. I built that house with overtime and prayer, I thought. Nailed every beam with calloused hands, and now I'm a stranger in my own bloodline. I looked in the mirror. Same eyes, same jawline, same man, but something had cracked. My wife once told me, "Don't let them rewrite your story while you're still alive." She was right, again. I wiped my hands, steadied my breath, and stepped back into the dining room. The weight hadn't lifted, but my spine straightened. The waiter was back. He placed the bill gently, leaned in, and said, "Welcome back, Mr. Roland. It's good to see the owner again." The room froze. Demier paled like a ghost. And me. I didn't say a word, but everything inside me had already shifted. The morning came slow. Sunlight crept through the thin curtains like it didn't want to wake me. I sat upright on the stiff mattress, listening to the city outside my window, sirens wailing far off, someone pushing a shopping cart down the sidewalk, gospel music humming faintly through the neighbor's radio. But in my head, I kept hearing that waiter's voice. "Welcome back, owner." It played over and over like a scratched record. I hadn't touched the coffee sitting cold on the table. I just stared at that manila envelope on the counter. Demir had handed it to me with a smile, called it just paperwork to confirm everything. I tucked it into my jacket without a second thought last night. Now, I looked at it like it had teeth. My hands trembled again. Not from age, but from something deeper. I whispered into the silence. A man's name on paper can disappear faster than his presence at his own table. 2 weeks ago, they came bearing smiles and pie. Kiana's sweet potato still warm. She always brought it when she wanted something. Demir hugged me tight and patted my back like he hadn't grown distant. "It's just paperwork for insurance, Pops," he said. "You'll still be the owner in every way that matters." He said it smooth, practiced, like he knew how to talk to an old man with tired bones. Era used to tell me, "Trust, but read." She'd shake her head whenever I signed church forms without checking. But that day, I ignored her voice in my head. I didn't feel like arguing. They brought a notary, too. Claimed she was from some agency. But now that I think about it, she seemed a little too friendly with Kiana. They laughed about something before they even rang the bell. I signed. They thanked me and left right after. No lingering, no coffee. Just gone. Back in the present, I opened the envelope. Inside was the deed. Not a copy. A full transfer. My name wasn't on it anymore. Just Demir's and Kiana's. It felt like reading my own obituary in a language I didn't recognize. There was also a printed email from a real estate firm. Cold, corporate. "Your occupancy agreement expires in 10 days. 10. I called the number listed, already disconnected. I sat back in my chair staring at the wall. No TV, no clock ticking, just the weight of what I'd done. They turned love into legal language. And just like that, I wasn't confused anymore. I was crushed. I thought of my father in Alabama, how he lost our family's land because he couldn't read the contract he signed during a drought. A handshake was all he needed. But that handshake cost us acres. Now it was me. Different time, same loss. By noon, I found myself back on the familiar street. My old house stood tall, painted new. Lawn clipped, porch polished. It looked like it had moved on without me. I knocked once. Demir opened the door like I was just another visitor. "You're here early, Pops. You could have called first." His voice was casual, like nothing was wrong. Kiana stood behind him, arms crossed, watching. "That house was mine before you learned to walk on those floors," I said, calm but firm. "And now it's ours," he replied. "You said you wanted peace. This is peace." Peace. That word again. He wasn't offering peace. He was packaging betrayal with a bow. Kiana didn't blink. Let's not confuse Ayla with drama. As if my truth was just noise to be filtered out. Ayla ran into the room and froze when she saw me. "Grandpa, are we still baking cookies this weekend?" I wanted to say yes. Wanted to grab her hand and walk straight to the kitchen. But the silence from her parents said otherwise. Kiana leaned down, all politeness. "Sweetie, we'll see. Grandpa has things to do." Then she looked up at me. "We can't have confusion about ownership around her, Mr. Roland. Mr. Not Dad, not Pops, just Mr. A stranger at his own front door." I didn't say another word, just nodded and turned around. The door clicked shut behind me. One lock, then two. Each sound a nail in the coffin. It wasn't the house they took. It was the story attached to it. I walked slow back to my rental. Took the long route, passing by the old church, the gas station I used to fill up before Sunday services. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't. Back inside, I sat in the dark, no TV, no radio, just thinking. At some point, the phone rang. Mr. Roland, the voice on the line said, businesslike. I'm afraid your son has initiated a loan under the property's new title. I didn't answer, just let the breath out slow, sharp, like I was bracing for the next blow. I walked, no direction, just my feet hitting concrete I used to know. The West End didn't look the same no more. Cafes with chalkboard menus had pushed out Mama Johnson's catfish spot. I used to sit outside that place on Saturdays, laughing with Era and talking about football. Now it smelled like oat milk and sour coffee. Every porch I passed had ghosts, some real, some remembered. Elders nodded at me from behind their screens. We didn't exchange words. We didn't have to. Men like us, we knew. We carried stories in our eyes. You could tell the weight a man bore by how slow he lowered into his chair. I reached the old corner where my house used to peek from between the oaks. I saw us there. Me on a ladder, brush in hand, Era holding the bucket steady. My wife on the lawn, picking hydrangeas, humming to herself. She loved blue ones most, said they reminded her of Sunday dresses and cool shade. They say you don't know what you had till it's gone, but sometimes you knew. And they took it anyway. That house wasn't just a place, it was a promise I kept through layoffs, bad knees, and lost brothers. It held her final years, her whispers, her prayers. And now, I turned the corner toward Era's house. It was small, just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that always smelled like cornbread, but it felt like something real. She opened the door before I knocked, didn't ask no questions, just poured me a cup of tea and pushed the sugar bowl toward me. I sat, took it all in, the same lace curtains from Mama's house, a photo of us kids at Coney Island, Sam Cooke on the radio, crackling like old vinyl even though it was digital. After a while, she asked, "Why you out walking with grief in your eyes?" I didn't answer right away. They didn't just take the house, Era. They touched her room, moved her Bible, took her Sunday hats off the hooks like they were just decoration. Her hand paused midair, stirring her tea. You said what now? They gave away most of her things. Said they were clearing space for Ayla's new playroom. Her piano, gone. Bible ended up at a Goodwill. Her eyes closed like she was steadying herself against a blow. Lord help me. They emptied the soul of that house. We didn't speak after that. Just sat. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full of things you can't name. Era finally said, "We gotta talk truth before truth disappears." I stood up and started pacing. All I did was build, save, protect, and now I'm a burden? Demir's voice echoed in my head. You should relax now, Pops. No. What he meant was, step aside. I shook my head. I gave them a foundation, and they sold the bricks. My voice cracked, not from rage, from heartbreak. Era reached out and grabbed my hand. You still breathing? That means you still got tools left in you. I stopped pacing, looked at her. They don't know the war they just started, I said. And I'm no longer unarmed. Right then, something shifted inside me. The old man in the mirror wasn't some broken leftover. He was rebuilding, with scars as blueprints. That's when the phone rang. Era answered, but her eyes were already narrowing. It's Kiana, she mouthed, then handed it to me. I held the phone like it might burn me. Just checking in, Kiana chirped. Wanted to make sure the move's on track. We need clarity for Ayla, you know. Clean breaks are important for children. You mean the kind where you sweep history under new carpets? She laughed. It's just a house, Mr. Roland. You'll get over it. Mr. Roland. That name again. Like I hadn't tucked in her child or paid for her nursing courses. I see, I said quietly. She went on, casual as ever. Oh, and we had to toss the piano. No room for it. Hope that's okay. My hands started trembling. I said nothing. Era snatched the phone and ended the call without a word. I sat back down, hard. They want war with a man who buried a queen, I muttered. They better bring more than contracts. That night, I sat on Era's steps, the sky clear above me, stars out, quiet breeze through the magnolia tree. They thought they'd broken me, but they didn't know. They just gave me a reason to rise. They made a mistake, I said aloud. They thought silence meant surrender. I arrived at the legal aid clinic with my folder tucked under my coat, heart heavy but mind alert. The receptionist barely glanced up as I walked in, but when I said my name, her eyes flickered. The room held elders clutching documents, waiting, some for cases like mine, some for simpler things. I sat, fidgeting, feeling older than I already was. When the paralegal called me in, I handed over the documents Kiana had emailed. She flipped through, brow furrowed. "We just need to confirm these signatures," she said, voice steady. Then she paused. "Mr. Roland, this notarization date, is this after the power of attorney was revoked?" My stomach lurched. "Revoked? What do you mean, revoked?" She looked down at her screen. "Your power of attorney was quietly transferred months before this transfer. It appears you no longer held that authority when the deed was changed." That hit me like cold water. My pulse jangled. Betrayal isn't loud. It whispers in paperwork. My hands shook as I asked, "Who did that?" She didn't look up. "The file shows a signature from Demir and Kiana in place of yours." A pause. "This looks forged." I stared at her. The word forged echoed against bone. For years I believed in loyalty. Now I realize loyalty is just another contract someone can void. I clutched my forehead. Shame walked in beside anger. How could I have been so blind? Era's voice drifted in my memory. "If you ain't read it, don't ink it." I should have listened. She continued, "We can challenge this. You have options." Her voice was soft but sure, like she believed in me more than I believed in myself at that moment. Then my mind drifted back to a month before that dinner. Demir came by with a folder so sleek it felt built for memory, not math. He said, "Dad, you always told me, keep things clean for the next generation." Kiana stood behind him, handing me that folder. "Just formalities for family legacy," she said, voice honey-sweet. I signed. I even joked, "Y'all better not put me in a home now." We all laughed. In hindsight, that joke rang hollow. Back in the clinic, I shut my eyes. The betrayal was mapped in ink I didn't witness. I knew they planned this long before the dinner. I watched the legal assistant slide my papers across, my name twisted into something false that benefited others, and I felt the weight, not of age, but of losing identity. She said, "You've got time to pursue civil action." I looked up. My grip on the folder tightened. I said quietly, "I don't want to sue my son, but I won't be their fool no more." I rose and walked out, going through the clinic's glass doors like stepping into judgment. The wind was sharp outside. I held the folder close as if it were the only tangible thing left that belonged to me. I felt bruised, but I also felt something else, resolve. Later that evening, Era arrived carrying an old drawer she'd pulled from storage. Key in hand, she handed it to me. So I unlocked it. Inside, wrapped in faded tissue, was a sealed envelope in my wife's handwriting. Label, "For Roland, when it hurts too much." My fingers trembled as I held it. I didn't know what she would tell me, but she knew I needed direction. More than revenge, something real. I unfolded her letter slowly. My wife's penmanship wavered as if she knew those words would outlive her. "If you're reading this, they've crossed a line." She wrote that she always believed I had to guard what we built, not with anger, but with resolve. She warned, "Don't let kindness become your cage." I read and reread, feeling her faith anchor me. My hands trembled, and I whispered, "You knew. You always knew." I folded the letter and slipped it into my wallet. It would ride with me now, a reminder, not a weight. I drove to the community center, walking halls I'd passed countless times. In my mind, I rehearsed what I'd say to Brother Clem. We met in a back office, his gray hair and weathered suit reminding me of old Sunday sermons. He listened as I laid out every document I'd gathered. He leaned back. This wasn't sloppy. This was strategic theft, he said. His eyes burned with understanding. He added, "You don't need to make noise to make moves. Let 'em sleep on you." Those words hit me. A strategy formed in my mind, not revenge blind, but careful, measured. I opened my notebook and began writing names, dates, gaps, and signatures, each a notch. I closed that meeting saying, "They think I'm done. They ain't ready for round two." That afternoon, my phone rang. Demir's name flashed. I felt calm. I answered. "Pops, hope you're settling in. Let's not make this ugly," he said, voice dripping false ease. I held my silence a moment, then spoke. "Ugly already came, son. I'm just sweeping now." I didn't yell. I didn't break. "You crossed your mother's grave and you crossed me." He laughed. That laugh, so cheap, dismissive. "You ain't got the money or strength for court battles. Enjoy your peace, old man." The contempt was clear. He thought my age was a weakness. He didn't know. I ended with, "Sometimes silence ain't surrender. It's set up." That evening, I sat under the dim kitchen light at Era's house, papers spread before me. Deeds, revocations, notarized signatures. I matched names and timelines. I wrote thoughts I'd never spoken. Era appeared with a cup of tea and offered comfort. She watched me. "You always been a storm wrapped in silk," she said. "Let 'em feel the thunder." I nodded, throat tight. I let 'em paint me soft so long they forgot I built concrete. I pulled out a blank request for reinstatement, not to file yet, but to frame what must be said. I am not done. Not yet. When I finally lay down and opened an old album Era brought, I saw a gap in its pages. A photo torn from a frame. A young Demir holding a for sale sign beside his mother. I stared. Betrayal didn't begin last month. It started long before. I left Era's house without a word. Just a nod, a soft click of the door, and I was swallowed up by the night. The streets had changed, but they still held pieces of me. My hands gripped the steering wheel, steady, but not calm. When I turned onto the old block, the porch light was off. My porch. It used to stay on like a lighthouse, welcoming neighbors, watching over us. Now it sat in silence, cold and stripped. I pulled over across the street, my eyes fixed on the house, my house. I flicked on a small flashlight and aimed it through the front window. No pictures, no curtains, no couch, just blankness. I'd known emptiness before, but not like this. This was erasure. I still remembered the code. My fingers didn't hesitate, even though part of me hoped it had been changed. At least that would have been honest. But the door clicked open. Habit brought me through the foyer, into the living room. The air was stale, still, the kind of silence that presses in on your ears. I moved slow, taking it in, the spot where Ayla used to crawl under the coffee table, the corner where me and Era danced slow to Al Green on Saturday nights. I drifted toward the den, heart dragging behind me. That's where I saw it, an empty nail on the wall, one frame gone. My breath stopped. It was the photo. Me, Era, Demir, back when all three of us still believed in forever. It was gone. I stood there a long time staring at that little piece of metal like it could speak. That wall had held more than a frame. It held proof that we were once solid, that I mattered. And now, it was just drywall. My hands shook, not from age, but fury. I turned to leave, but caught a glimpse of a file box shoved into the office corner. Curiosity or grief, I don't know which, made me walk over. I opened it. Inside, old ledgers, estate outlines, meeting notes from family gatherings. I'd written some of these pages myself, but now my name was missing. Replaced. Erased. One page had a family trust document, once signed by me, now with Kiana's name scribbled in. Another listed family council leadership with Demir as head. No mention of me, not even a title. I didn't just lose a house, I'd been written out of my own legacy. I whispered it aloud, low. They didn't just take my roof, they rewrote my place in my own story. My hands dug deeper through the papers, like if I kept flipping, maybe I'd find a page where I still existed. Nothing. I gathered what I could, shoved it in a folder, and clutched it to my chest as I walked back out that door. I stood by my car and looked back at the house, silhouette in the moonlight. It looked smaller now. Or maybe I was seeing it with clearer eyes. I remembered Ayla's face when she looked away from me at the table, Era's words circling in my head, and that letter, that voice from the grave reminding me I still had breath, which meant I still had fight. I pulled a page from the ledger, blank. I took my pen out and in all capital letters I wrote Roland. Big, bold, unmissable. I held it up in the porch light just to see it shine. I was halfway down the street, wheels rolling slow, when I saw it, a shape on the porch. Still, watching. My foot hit the brake, my heart kicked hard in my chest. Whoever that was, they weren't just passing by. My eyes locked onto theirs, and I knew that wasn't a stranger. That was someone I thought was gone long ago. I walked that neighborhood like a man still halfway invisible. Every step down those cracked sidewalks stirred up something old in me. Memories, regrets, and something hotter, something ready to burn. The rosebush era planted out front, overgrown. The bench where I used to read on Sunday mornings, gone. I passed the corner store where I'd once fixed a kid's bike chain right on the curb. Now folks watched from windows, curtains shifting just enough for me to see their eyes, quiet, darting, too polite to speak, but too loud in silence. A man crossed the street near me. Gray coat, familiar face from church. He slowed and gave me a once-over, then smiled with a twitch. "Hey, sir, the cafe's back that way," he said, gesturing down the block, then with a look that hit harder than a slap. "Or, are you cleaning staff today?" That one stung deep, didn't even recognize me. Or maybe he did, and that was worse. Later that afternoon, I made my way to the church. My name was still printed on the flyer they passed out, but you wouldn't have known it from the way folks avoided my eyes. The courtyard was busier than I expected. I slowed by the fountain, listening to pieces of a conversation floating through the air like smoke. She said they moved him to one of those care homes over near Ashby. I heard he's not well. Kiana was crying when they packed his things up last week. Every word tightened something in my chest. I stood at the edge of the fellowship hall, doors wide open, lights bright like they had something to prove. When I stepped inside, the noise dipped low, not silent, just cautious. Pastor Martin gave me that smile, too practiced to be real, and motioned toward the front. "Let's welcome our brother who returns tonight." Returns? I wasn't a visitor. I built half this sanctuary with sweat and tithe. I took my time walking to the pulpit. My hands weren't shaking, but my jaw clenched tight. When I spoke, it wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. You used to see me as a vessel. Tonight, I stand as a voice. The room held its breath. I built my home with my hands and opened it with my heart. Some of you shared potlucks in my kitchen. Some of y'all laid on my couch when life got too heavy. I was never rich in money, but I was rich in trust. And now, that's what they stole. Eyes darted. A few folks nodded. Others looked at the floor. They used the law to steal a roof, but they will not steal my name. They will not steal what I stood for. A woman gasped somewhere in the back. A man folded his arms tight. I leaned forward just slightly. See, they can forge a document. They can move boxes, but they can't move what's in here. I tapped my chest. Unless I give it up. I didn't. I won't. Afterward, folks filed out slower than usual. A few stopped by whispering, "We're with you," or "Let us know what you need." Most just nodded, then turned away. Kiana showed up near the end, arms folded, mouth tight. She leaned in. "Talking loud don't change deeds," she said under her breath. I met her gaze, calm. Words built this church. I'm just rebuilding. She didn't respond, just turned and left like the hallway owed her a breeze. Brother Clem came up behind me, his voice low and steady. Records have been requested. Pastor knows, elders know. I nodded. No celebration, just a fact. Outside, a few of the elders stood near the steps. One of them touched my arm gently. Don't let them drown our story. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. As the sky darkened, I made my way toward the door, ready to leave. That's when a young man, maybe 20, walked up holding something wrapped in a brown paper bag. Sir, I think this belongs to you. He pulled out a frame. It was my wedding photo. Me and Era, grinning like fools in front of that same rose bush before time got heavy. I took it slow. My fingers brushed the edge like it was glass and fire at the same time. Where'd you find this? I asked. His eyes shifted. In the trash pile behind the house. I recognized her. Figured you might want it. He didn't stay for my thanks, just nodded and walked away. I stood there a long while staring at that picture. They tried to bury me, but they forgot. Some things rise. The sun hadn't climbed too high yet, but the air was already busy, marching bands tuning up, kids tugging at flag strings, and folks finding their places along the barricades. I walked toward the parade grounds, slow, steady, with my old military jacket zipped up and the metal resting against my chest like a quiet weight. Years ago, Era and I had walked here hand in hand, her white gloves folded around my arm. Now, I walked alone. Veterans lined the walkways, some in wheelchairs, others standing proud. Some nodded, others stared like they half remembered my name but didn't want to say it out loud. Banners read, "Honor our heroes." A bold statement for a town that couldn't even honor the men still breathing. I passed under one of those signs, hearing a few whispers trail behind me. A child asked his father who I was. The man said, "Just someone who used to live here." I kept walking. The MC took the stage and called out names. Councilmen, school board chairs, local sponsors. When he got to me, he said, "And please welcome a friend of our community, Roland Mays." I smiled, tight-lipped. They stripped my title and my home, but they still wanted to use my name when it suited them. A friend. Not father, not founder, just friendly enough for decoration. When it was time, I stepped onto the stage. The mic was warm in my hand, the sun sharp against my back. I didn't look at the crowd at first. I looked up at the flag. My service, I said, voice low but firm, was never about medals or applause. It was about the people I came home to, the land I worked, the house I built. I scanned the crowd. They were listening now. That house, still standing, quiet but strong, once opened its doors to neighbors, sheltering more storms than most churches could count. Some veterans straightened in their chairs. A few kids stopped playing. I leaned in. They tried to erase me. They rewrote my story without my say. And just as I reached for the next line, "But here I stand," the microphone cut out. Just like that. Dead. A breath caught in my throat, but I let the silence settle for a moment. I stepped back, then forward again, and I said it anyway, louder, raw. You can cut the mic, but you can't cut the truth. You can't mute what's already rooted deep. The murmurs started in the crowd. Some cheers. Phones lifted. Someone said my name loud enough to echo. And then I saw them. Demier and Kiana standing just outside the shade line, arms folded like two judges waiting to pounce. Ayla stood further back, caught between faces, her eyes locked on me. A voice from behind me, older, hoarse, shouted, "Let the man speak!" I raised my hand to calm the noise, but Daimir stepped forward, raising his voice. "Dad, this ain't the place. You're making noise where there's supposed to be peace." My jaw tensed. "Son, peace built on lies ain't peace. It's just silence with a smile." Kiana chimed in sharp. "You made your choice, remember? Walked out. Now you want to play the victim?" I stared at her. I didn't walk out. I was pushed out. There's a difference. The crowd didn't move. Some leaned closer, others looked down, uncomfortable. That moment right there, it was heavier than the metal on my chest. When the event ended, people milled about, pretending nothing had just cracked open in front of them. Some clapped politely. Most avoided eye contact. As I stepped down, one of the organizers handed me a small box. "This came for you," he said, hesitant. Before I could speak, Ayla ran up, breathless. "I tried to stop them," she whispered. "They said it didn't belong anymore." It was the same box I'd given her. Inside, her grandmother's locket. A note now taped to the lid. "Return to sender. No longer recognized." That hit harder than court documents ever did. I held the box in both hands, turned toward the crowd still lingering. "This box," I said quietly, "held more than jewelry. It held stories, sacrifices, belief. I gave it to my granddaughter with the hope she'd carry on something real." No one moved. I looked straight ahead. Now it's returned, unrecognized. Not because it changed, but because they want to forget who it came from. I walked off the stage with the box tucked under my arm. My body ached, but my steps were steady. At the edge of the crowd, a hand touched my shoulder. I turned. A fellow vet, older than me, eyes steady, gave a nod. "You ain't alone in this fight," he said low. "Don't let 'em bury what we bled for." I nodded back, saying nothing. He walked away into the sun like he'd said all he needed to. And I stood there, metal heavy, truth louder than speakers, and the battle far from done. A year to the day since the parade. Same restaurant, same entry bell chime, same scent of lemon butter and fried cornmeal clinging in the air. But the man walking through those doors this evening wasn't the same one who'd sat here in silence, humiliated and alone. I walked taller, not louder, just fuller. Ownership of my home had quietly returned. No headlines, no cameras, just legal pages signed and settled, earned through patience and paperwork. They'd lost their grip on what they thought they'd claimed for good. The host spotted me. At first, confusion. Then his eyes caught the detail. My posture, my face, the metal still pinned inside my coat. He straightened, gave me a slight nod. "Right this way, Mr. Mays." And there it was. The same table, same golden chairs. The one where Demir once had me wait like a nobody. I sat with a slow exhale, smoothed out my coat, ordered catfish and a black coffee. Era's favorite. She would have smiled at the symmetry of it. As I waited, I ran my fingers across the wood grain of the table. Funny how furniture holds memory better than some people. My voice, inside, quiet, but firm. Sometimes peace don't mean forgetting. It means knowing they can't take your name anymore. I was halfway through the plate when the door behind me chimed again. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The shift in air, the pause in small talk, the stiffening of shoulders, it told me everything. Then I heard the voice, tentative, lower than I remembered. "Dad." I looked up. Demir stood there. Older, less polished, his suit too loose like it didn't belong to him anymore. He looked around, unsure if he should stay, but too proud to back away. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. I looked at him, not with anger, not with welcome. "This table's always been mine," I said calmly. "You just borrowed the seat." He blinked hard, then sat down. For a long time we didn't speak. Just the sound of cutlery and soft jazz from the corner. The weight between us wasn't hate. It was the noise of all that had gone unsaid. And then, from the far side of the room, the waiter approached. The same young man from a year ago, still sharp, still fast on his feet. He stopped beside the table, looked at me, then at Demir. He didn't hesitate. He smiled, genuine. "Welcome back, owner." There it was. Same phrase, same moment. Only now, turned inside out. Demir flinched, not dramatically, just a flicker in the eye. His gaze dropped to the table. I didn't gloat, didn't lean in. I just laid my hand flat on the wood. "You see, son," I said low, Respect ain't about title or papers. It's earned, and you don't earn it by taking what was never yours. The waiter nodded slowly. He understood. He stepped back, letting the silence have its place. Demir cleared his throat, voice hoarse. I thought taking control would make me strong, he said. But I just became what I feared, a man with no roots. I didn't rush to reply. After a moment, I looked at him, not as a rival, not as a child, but just as a man. You don't have to ask for forgiveness, son, I said. Just don't repeat the same story. He nodded once, then again, slower. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. That ain't how this family operates. But something inside that moment shifted. Bent, not broken. I paid the bill for both meals. No words exchanged about it. I signed the receipt. Roland, homeowner. We stood up together, but I walked ahead. Outside, the air was soft, almost like Era's hands brushing my back. The sky had that faded blue that only shows after a good rain's past. As I reached the sidewalk, I glanced back through the restaurant window. The waiter stood by the bar, watching. When our eyes met, he lifted a small glass toward me. Just a nod, just enough. I raised my coffee cup in return. A quiet toast. Maybe homes ain't just built with wood and nails. Maybe they're rebuilt every time we choose peace over pride.